Hello everyone! Without long intro, let's get to the point. This is not a tutorial how to make a corset, but more behind the scenes of one exact case. As the corset was made to my measurements, I already had the pattern that I drafted many years ago. I'm using a Dupioni silk that has been stiffened using an interlining with a glue at one side. Of course, you can make the embroidery before cutting everything. It will be way more easy because you can use a special embroidery hoop. Unfortunately, I didn't think about that and started from cutting all the pieces I need. Usually, I'm using a chalk pencil to make a sketch, so I can imagine how the final embroidery will look like, and only after that I start to make it. There are a few ways of how you can prepare the front panel for inserting the basque. I usually just make buttonholes because, in my opinion, this is the most durable option. Just remember to cut all the threads off for a nice look. As the silk is rather thin, I used an additional layer of Corsetry coutil in a beige color. As I said before, there are a lot of ways of how you can connect all the panels. You just need to experiment and find one that suits you the best. I love the combination of silk and coutil because the corset is still rather thin, but it can hold the pressure really well. The next step is to sew the waist tape and make a boning channels. Sometimes I use densely woven cotton tape for channels, or sometimes I make them using the same coutil I already used for this corset as a strength layer. I'm not planning to insert any lining to this corset. I want it to be as thin as possible. So the base is done. At that stage, I'm checking if everything is symmetrical, if the embroidery is at the same level, and I'm also checking the horizontal measurements, such as underbust, waist and hips. I love to attach the bias tape at the bottom edge before I start inserting the bones, but it doesn't mean this is the only option. Do as you like. In this case, I'm using satin bias tape in a contrasting color just because I wanted to match the embroidery. I'm only using steel bones in the corsets I make. Usually there are 6 flat steel bones, 4 at the back for back and lacing support, and 2 at the front panels. I love flat steel bones because you can slightly bend them. For example, if you have lordosis, such delicate bend allows the back to fit properly. Of course, if you took into account the shape of your back when you were making the pattern. I also bend the front bone to be sure that it will hold the lower part of the tummy. Other bones are spiral steel. The quantity depends on the size of the corset and also on the project, because sometimes the corset has 14 panels in total, but sometimes it's 22. I never make a holes for grommets. I only make a cross cut at the material because when you are using very thin fabric for the corset and make a hole, it is a risk that the grommet won't hold it very well. But when you have an additional fabric, it fills all the free space when you are inserting the grommet. And then I'm using a grommet press machine to be sure that they will stay in place forever. The final step, the lacing process. You can use spare tape, satin ribbon, corset string, round or flat. The amount of options is really huge. I'm using satin ribbon because I always use a corset as a part of my lingerie, and it's easy to hide such ribbon so there is no lacing bulge at the back. And the corset is done! Hooray! A first try is one of my favorite parts of the whole process of creating a new clothing piece. It is a mix of excitement and a small stress because I always worry if everything fits right, even though I checked this pattern several times already. But, different things can happen. I decided not to make a high back in this project, but I'm absolutely in love with long hips. I think that creates a beautiful shape and also make a nice proportions when it comes to the vertical measurements of the corset.